Hi everybody, Steven here. Um, so today I'm just gonna give you a quick a presentation that I just did last week. It was our final practice presentation, and the final one is gonna be in November. So I'm just gonna give you a quick presentation. So the title of my project is Between Myth and Reality, and my research question is how can architecture represent the cultural memories born of colonialism in Tahiti? Oops. So those are the topics that I've looked at during my research. So it's divided into three parts about Tahiti, the colonization of Tahiti, and then more about the theory about making memories. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. So for Tahiti, at first I was interested about how people actually got into Tahiti. So I looked at the migrations of the Polynesian through the islands and the type of tools they were using. As you can see, there's the Polynesian stick map and the star compass, which wasn't really a material object, but more like a mental map that allows them to use the star to cross the oceans. And then some informations about the double hull canoe that they were using. And then I went into the geography of Tahiti. Tahiti is one of the 118 islands that form French Polynesia. And there's two type of islands, the pointy one like Tahiti, and then you got Morurua and Fongatofa, which are atolls, which is a ring of corals that protecting a lagoon. And you can see at the bottom, it's just a diagram. So you can see an atoll is actually an island that over time has been sinking as the tectonic plate moves. Then I looked into ancient Tahiti, so the culture of Tahiti prior the arrival of the European. So I looked into the religion, the architecture, the arts and craft. Also interested in about the social hierarchy and the type of economy they had at that time. Following that, I looked into the colonial discourse, what kind of pushed the European to navigate into the Pacific. There was this guy, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which was a French philosopher during the Enlightenment. He had this idea about the noble savage living in paradise, living with nature, and who was untainted by the modernity. So he kind of pushed a lot of the navigator to go and look for that island to see if it was true. And I think it was Samuel Wallace Bougainville who first arrived in Tahiti in 1767. And then 2 years later, I think there was Cook, James Cook, who arrived there. And both of them actually took back some Tahitian to show them to the kings and queens. And they wanted to see if the noble savage could actually adapt himself to the modern life. Then I looked into representations, how people were actually seeing Tahiti. So if you can see the picture at the bottom, landscape painting, it was done by one of the artists that was with James Cook. So you get a first glimpse, first idea of what the paradise would look like. And then this really attracted a lot of people to come and discover Tahiti. The picture on the left is a painting of Gauguin. He's a famous French painter who fell in love with Tahiti and moved to Tahiti and actually died in I think it's the Marquesas, like another archipelago of the French Polynesia. And then up top, it's just a photo of a postcard that has been used to kind of attract people all over the world to come in and visit Tahiti. And then we moved on to the nuclear experiment. For those who doesn't know, starting in 1960s, the French government decided to carry nuclear tests in French Polynesia, not in Tahiti, but in Moruroa and Whangatofa. I think there's been 193 nuclear tests, some of them atmospheric, most of them underground, and the test lasted for about 30 years. And then I went to look into memory. I think it came with the, let's say, like I was born during the nuclear test era, but of course the way I remember the event will be totally different from the person who went and worked on Moruroa and actually was exposed to the radiation. Just to say that depending on your background or you will see and remember things differently. And then I went to look for precedent. It's a mix of cultural center, museum, and memorials. I was heavily influenced by the Berlin Jewish Museum. I was really interested in the way Daniel Limbiskin was designing the spaces to kind of evoke meaning. And also for my program, I've decided to design a memorial for the nuclear test in the Pacific, as well as a museum part that will talk about the history and the culture of Tahiti. It's going to be a place of memory and knowledge. So the site that I've picked is in Papeete, which is the main city of Tahiti. The main reason I picked this place first is because that's where most people in French Polynesia live, and it's located near all the schools, the business center, the retail areas, right on the waterfront, so it's easy access by locals and tourists. And if you see on the figure ground on the right, I've kind of highlighted some of the civic building, government building, all the kind of important place in the city. So I've decided to pick a site. There was an empty lot just next to the Parc Bougainville, and it's all around all those government buildings. So I thought it was a appropriate place to kind of express how important the memorial and the museum would be. And well, coincidentally, it was actually the site that was given by France to the Tahitian government. It was given back. So yeah, great. So here's some photo of the site. As you can see, it used to be the old Navy Hotel. It hasn't been used for many years, so the only thing that's growing there is just trees and grass. And around it is just like, I think it's office buildings, 2 stories. There's a car parks, which is, this one is located here. Number 6, just a wall. And there's like tall trees on this side. So there's a lot to work with. So those are. Oh, now I'm gonna talk about the concept ideas that I use to kind of place the building. So plan composition. So the first thing that I did is think about how I could represent the colonizations of Tahiti. So I just took the timeline that I've created before and kind of stretch it along the site. And so the black line would be the line of colonizations, which is also representing kind of the European culture. The red dots are all the key events, like the arrival of the European evangelizations, when Tahiti turned French. Then there's the colonial era, and this is like the nuclear era as well. And then I've added that blue line, which for me represented the Tahitian life, and it was shifting after each key event. And then when you intersect those two lines, you actually create shared spaces, spaces where the experience are shared by both cultures. But at the same time, if you take in consideration the boundary of the site, you would see there's some negative space that are created, and I would have seen those as a space that is only known by the Tahitian. And then I've done some sketches. I will show you that later. But I felt that the circulation was a bit broken, even though they all connected through a line. It just those small spaces didn't make a unified whole. So I went and layered this idea of the atoll, which is the reef barrier that it's protecting the lagoon. So I take all those spaces here and kind of put it all around the boundaries to kind of create this protected open space, and of course allows for some entries, and while keeping that center line. And finally, I've used the grid to kind of rationalize the plan and unify the different spaces through proportions. And it was also a way to kind of represent the influence of French government into the development of Tahiti. So before we go to the concepts that's regarding the interior, we will go through the design. So that's the design. I mean, there's a lot of to process here, but we'll go through one drawing one by one. But first, maybe I'll show you the concept of the timeline. So those are all the little sketches that I've done prior going to 3D. As you can see, those are the timeline, and I've just literally extruded everything to create a 3D form. And that's the type of elevation that it gave me. But let's go back to the floor plan. So this is the floor plan, and that's kind of the elevations that we have at the moment. So the building is actually divided into 3 levels, but of course there's more floor plan because I'm using mid levels as well. So it's 3 levels. The underground is exhibition space and the memorial space. At the ground level, you would have the reception area, coffee shops, and some gardens. And the upper level, you'd have the museum area, and at the top, you have a roof garden that's accessible and would also have some outdoor exhibitions. So you will enter from the front, where is the existing facade. I was planning to just keep the facade and demolish everything that's behind, just to retain some of the history. here at the front, I would see the reception, and then you would turn to the east. Here you would have two set of staircase, one taking you to the exhibition levels and the other one that's going up to the museum. If you will go through here, the exhibition is divided into two, and they all connect to the memorial space here, and there's another set of staircase that will take you up to the upper level. The circulation, the different floors are connected through a set of staircase and elevator on both ends, and in the middle they're connected through ramps. Okay, so now let's go back to the presentation and talking about the 3Ps, which is the three concepts that kind of define the interior layout of the building. So the first P is performance. Just like Limp Bizkit, I wanted to create spaces that kind of evoke meaning. So at the entry, I would have a huge aquarium that for me would represent all the beauty of Tahiti, the turquoise water, the tropical fish, the colorful corals, and would represent a life that it's full and vibrant. So that's the first thing that you would see as you enter the memorial or the museum. And then on the other side, you would have this space here, which is the memorial space, which is a void. Really simple. There's nothing inside. It's just like a sitting on the edges and the little opening at the top that gives you to the sky, and that's the only source of light. And this one was to kind of represent the void that has been left after the nuclear test. And it's just a place for people to kind of remember about what happened. It's just like a place of meditation. And then the second P is positionality, as earlier I was talking about memory, that depending on where you stand, you will see things differently and remember differently. So that's what I try to achieve in having different levels within the space. So for example, in the memorial space, you get the main area, one that's underground and one that's on the roof. So the one underground is an exhibition space that kind of talk about the things that maybe the bad stuff about the nuclear testing, like harming the victims and how bad it was for the environment. Just those type of knowledge. It's a space that's a bit more compressed, darker, and that where you can really get close to the information that will be on the walls. And then you have the space in the middle, which is a high ceiling and there's nothing inside, that kind of push your gaze toward the sky. And then you get another level at the top, which is open to the environment and push your gaze to the outside. And finally, I get this idea of permeability, where I kind of want to express this idea of a building that it's being pierced through, just kind of like the nuclear test that kind of pierced the atolls. And in that way, I could bring the natural daylight within the building. And then I talked about materiality, the type of material and color that I'll be using on the building. So I first talked about patina. Patina, how do you define that? So I guess that's the word that they use to describe a material that kind of age over time. So in this instance, I've used copper panels that will clad the exterior of the mineral space, because copper, when it's exposed to the environment, especially to seawater, it will change over time. It will start brown and slowly turn into like a greenish color. This was a way for me to kind of represent the idea that the building is living and that it's aging. And then I was going to use some greenery that will be growing onto the facade, which will represent the different season that's happening in Tahiti. And finally, I was going to use light to kind of paint shadows inside the space within the building to represent the time of the day. That's it. So let's go back to the design. And this is the sections of the building that's cutting through here. As you can see, the aquarium is going to be on that side. Mirror space here. That's a exhibition space, and on top that's what I call the lagoon, which is a public open space. Here there's the sections of that image you've seen before, to add permeability and to bring the lights all the way down. Here I see the space as being used as a cafe, and that's another exhibition space. Here the ramps that are connecting the building through the middle, and just some shots of what you would see inside. So for the elevations, it was just like a material study. Here I was adding some timber. Is to go with the idea of time and decay, like over time you will need to replace, and so I guess it will involve the community in repairing that building. Stone at the bottom. This is the copper panel. Yep. So for my crit, some of the comments that I got was that my building was a bit too rigid, as you can see here, which is normal because it was really heavy influenced by the grid at the beginning. And then they also said that maybe I could do more with some more greenery or open space to kind of break up the building a bit more, which I think is a good idea. So what's next for me is to kind of do a bit of writing, but I also want to redesign another iteration of this by mixing the idea that I have at the beginning with the timeline and this one, to kind of break up the design. But yeah, I mean, that's it for today. Of course, if you have any questions, just leave it in a comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.